Number 1. Yesterday, on my way home from work, while walking around the local superstore alone, I spotted this group of 3 younger men. I'm typically the type to keep my head down and just keep walking on, but they were acting loud and carrying on in the store, so it was hard not to stare for a second. Anyway, I moved on and went to the automotive section, and they were there. Grabbed a few cans of pet food, and as I rounded the corner, they were there again. No big deal, I thought, and carried on with my shopping, as these things happen all the time. As I stopped into the pharmacy area, they were there again. I made eye contact and smiled at one of them, as I wasn't uncomfortable at this time. He did not smile back and gave me a very cold stare. It was strange, but I was thinking, well, maybe that person had a bad day, shrugged it off, and prepared myself for the potential hell that the checkout lines can sometimes be at these places. I looked up while I was waiting to pay and noticed that the men were there, waiting at the end of the scanner aisles on benches. Again, I thought, not a big deal, and grabbed my bag of goodies and was on my way out. I didn't see anyone as I was walking out of the store, but remember thinking it was strange how I seemed to keep running into the same people inside a huge superstore like that. Where this story takes a downturn is here. I typically park on the side of the building. There are more parking spaces than in the front, and it's easier to get in and out. So as I exit, I recognize the same group of 3 men whom I had seen around the store. Keys in hand, I walk towards my car about 30 feet away. When I'm about 5 feet from my car, I hear loud steps coming up behind me. At this point, I'm thinking, maybe they're just going to the car next to mine. Unfortunately, that was not the case. I get in and lock my doors out of habit just as the 3 men surround my vehicle, asking me,
"Where you going, sweetheart? We just want to talk."
One is trying to open my front passenger side door. The others are standing next to my back driver's side door and behind my car. At this point, my heart is racing, and without giving it a second thought, I put my car in reverse and sped out of that parking space like a bat out of hell. As I was putting my car from reverse to drive, they had one more opportunity to say something to me.
"We're here all the time. See you soon, sweetheart."
Luckily, I was able to get out of the parking lot and get home, albeit a little shaken. Number 2. This happened a few years ago, right before I deployed to the Middle East. I'm in the National Guard, so before we deployed, we had to train up at Fort Hood, Texas. After our training was finished, we got a 4-day pass. I was single, no kids, so I decided instead of going home, I would travel around Texas. After a few days in Austin, I wanted to see the Gulf, so I traveled to Rockport, Texas. I parked my rental about a 10-minute walk away from the beach, since it was a nice day, and I don't mind walking. It was pretty quiet, as it was about 9 a.m., but there were still quite a few people there. I was laying out and reading my Kindle when a heavily tattooed young guy walks up to where I'm laying out and asks if he can leave his clothes near me while he takes a dip. I say sure, he goes in the ocean, and I don't really think much of it. He comes out of the water about 10 minutes later and proceeds to lay down next to me and starts chatting. I kind of wanted to be left alone, but he seemed harmless and I didn't want to be rude, so I talked with him for a bit. His name is Angel, and he said he lived about 30 minutes away. He tells me he would have joined the military, but he spent time in prison. I don't ask for what. He tells me it was for some mix-up. This mix-up landed him 8 years. I try and direct the conversation to more harmless things, but he doesn't act like a lonely stranger or even a guy trying to hit on a girl. He's completely uninterested in anything except why I'm here and who I'm with. Then he starts getting real creepy. He keeps repeating back to me that,
"You're really all alone. You came here by yourself? You're not with anyone?"
Alarm bells are ringing. I didn't actually phrase any of it quite like that, but he read between the lines. Note to future self, always pretend to be waiting for friends. I start stressing that I'm leaving that day. I wasn't. And that I'm in the military and have to be back soon, or they'll consider me AWOL and start looking for me. True, but not for another 2 days when my pass is up. He pretty much ignores all of this, and I notice that we are both watching people walk by us carefully, if that makes sense. Luckily for me, it was getting more crowded, and families were walking by us in pretty steady intervals. He starts asking me what kind of car I drive, what hotel I'm staying in. He asks me where I'm parked. I tell him a rental. I'm leaving, and I don't remember where I'm parked. I've been creeped out for a while now, and I've been in some dangerous situations before, but I've never been more frightened than in broad daylight, surrounded by people, talking with this creep. He then starts telling me about this party in his town later tonight, and that I should come. I could meet all of his friends. He offers to drive me. Again, I bring up that I'm leaving, I'm in the military, and all that jazz. He continues to be amazed that I'm here all by myself. He also tells me he's parked right behind us. Do I want to see his car? No, I do not. I tell him I'm comfortable where I'm at. He had also put on his cargo shorts he took off from his ocean dip and kept rubbing one of the pockets while he talked to me. There was definitely something in there. I doubt it was a gun, but this guy was scaring the hell out of me, and it made me wonder if he had a knife or something. Now, I know it seems strange that I didn't just up and leave, but this guy was making every hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I wanted to extract myself without pissing him off. Then after mentioning the party again, he says something even creepier. He looks at my legs and says,
I bet you can run for days.
There was zero context to this statement. We weren't talking about working out, athletics, the Olympics, fitness routines, or even military training. None of those topics came up ever the whole time he was creeping me out. I look over and a family is walking by us fairly close, so I leapt up and started gathering my stuff, telling him I gotta go to the restroom, see you later. I power walk down closer to the water and walk along the beach in the opposite direction of my car towards the pier where there were restrooms and snacks, etc. He followed me the entire way while talking on his cell phone. I was walking along the beach while he was walking along the edge of the parking lot that ran parallel. Once I reached the pier, I doubled back to where my car was actually parked. I watched him until he finally stopped following me. There was a small booth that the parking attendant sat in. I parked in the free lot behind her, but I stopped and told her the situation, described the car I was getting into, which she could see from her booth. She agreed to make sure I got in my car safely. A little paranoid since I was fairly certain he had stopped following me, but just in case. I'm just glad the beach was fairly crowded. Number 3. My dad owns a construction company, and during the summer, I used to work there for some extra cash. Mostly my job was to clean and assist the supervisors with whatever they needed. It was hard work with unbearably hot conditions due to Alabama summers, but it paid well and gave me something to do. I was the only female who worked there, and so it was not uncommon for creeps to mess with me. Currently, I am 24. This particular incident happened when I was 16 during the first year of working this job. Now, for those of you who don't know, construction companies usually have their own employed workers to oversee the construction, while other companies are hired to do specialty work, such as electricity, plumbing, painting, etc. So the job site is filled with complete strangers who are there to do their job and then go home. They rarely try to strike up a conversation with you or even acknowledge your existence. Well, most of the time. We were in the middle of building a 3-story high church. There were 2 stairways, and my job was to scrub all the steps down with a toothbrush. This was tedious, and the easiest thing to do was for me to just sit on the steps as I worked. This meant I was unintentionally out of sight, and I worked quietly. I'm about halfway down the stairs, and there's a landing at the halfway point where pipes and AC ducts are running through the walls. I could hear a man cursing to himself as he attempted to install a pipe. I could not see him yet, but I could hear him. I didn't give it a second thought and continued quietly working. As I scooted further down the stairs, the man notices me. He begins to apologize, saying things like,
"Oh, I didn't see you there. I'm sorry for my language. If I had seen you, I wouldn't have said it."
I glance up at this and see what this guy looks like. He's obviously not one of our workers, but belongs to one of the other companies we had hired. He looks to be about in his 40s and is a carbon copy of Steve Buscemi if Steve Buscemi was bald and missing some teeth. I reassure him that it's fine, that I hear worse in school. He chuckles at this, and we both begin working again. He then starts to make small talk, asking which school I go to, how old I am, is one of the construction workers my dad, etc. Not in the mood for small talk, but I do my best to answer him politely, while also being very short with him, hoping he will realize I don't really want to be bothered. When I answer his question about my age with, "I'm 16, he looks intensely at me and says,
"You're 16 and already married."
My mind immediately goes into WTF mode. Why would he think that that statement was a perfectly normal one to make, despite the fact that it had nothing to do with our conversation? He sees my confused expression and grins, clarifying,
"Your ring."
At the time, I had a silver band that I wore on my left ring finger, giving the appearance of a wedding ring. I simply wore it there because that's the finger it fit best. I'm immediately uncomfortable with how things are going. I'm at least 15 feet away from him, and he still somehow noticed that small ring on my finger? Him questioning me about marriage was already unsettling in itself. I'm a 16-year-old kid, and he's old enough to be my dad. I explain that it's not a wedding ring. He laughs at that and says,
"Well, us men should consider ourselves lucky then."
I scrunch my face up, unsure of what he means, or whether or not it's an insult. He explains,
"Because you're still single, I mean."
Officially uncomfortable, I turn back around and begin furiously cleaning the stairs and praying that this guy finishes what he's doing so he can leave. I refuse to move down the stairs any further until he's gone. I don't want to get closer to him. Several uncomfortable questions later, the guy seems to finish and leaves. I breathe a sigh of relief and work on finishing the stairs. About 10 minutes later, the guy comes back with a cold bottle of Mountain Dew and holds it right in front of my face. I gingerly take it, and he says,
"It's pretty hot in here. You look like you needed it."
"Thanks," I replied. He then goes back to working in the stairwell while I just sit there and stare at the drink in my hand. It was strange. There's no electricity or AC in the building yet, so it's very dang hot. This church is in the middle of nowhere. No gas stations or stores are close by. There's no vending machines out there either. It's towards the end of the day, so the ice in everyone's coolers has long since melted and all their personal drinks are hot. Yet this Mountain Dew is cold as ice. Cautiously, I open the bottle and quickly realize that the lid has already been cracked from someone opening it. They obviously tried to reclose it in an attempt to hide the fact that it's been opened. I peer into the bottle to see little granules of something at the bottom of it. I quickly make the decision to not drink any of this. The guy has been watching me and questions why I haven't drunk any yet. I just flat out ignore him and act like I didn't hear his question. Out of the corner of my eye, I realize that he hasn't brought any of his tools back with him, and that at first glance, he looks like he's working. But when I pay close attention, I see that he's not actually doing anything. He's just making the motions of doing work while watching me when he thinks I'm not looking. He keeps insisting I have some of the drink because it's so hot, and I look like I'm gonna overheat. When he is unable to get a response from me, he changes tactics and attempts small talk again while I frantically try to think of how to get out of this situation. This part of the building is completely deserted. It's why I chose to clean those stairs first, so I wouldn't have to work around the other workers. The chances of someone walking through are non-existent.
You're working here with your dad, right? Who's your dad?
A maniacal grin spreads across my face as I realize he's just given me a way out. I answer, Kelvin, the owner of this construction business. His face turns pale, and in a reedy voice says,
Oh, the big boss, huh?
Yep. He quickly decides he has somewhere else to be. He didn't attempt to interact with me for the rest of the day, but I did catch him staring intently at me whenever we were in the same room. I threw away the Mountain Dew. So, Steve Buscemi lookalike, let's not meet again.